Accused serial killer Rex Heuermann back in court today to face a Long Island judge once again. The focus, DNA evidence in the case.
Long Island, a picturesque stretch of coastline known for its beauty and tranquility. But beneath the serene surface lies a chilling mystery that has haunted this community for over a decade. The search for Shannon Gilbert revealed a horrifying truth. 10 bodies, 10 lives stolen, and a killer who vanished into the shadows, leaving behind the question: who is the Long Island serial killer? In December of 2010, an investigation began for a missing woman, Shannon Gilbert. The 23-year-old woman was an escort and had made a panicked 911 call the night before she disappeared. Her bodyguard drove her to Joseph Brewer in Ocean Beach, as he had hired Gilbert, who was a sex worker. She was reported to have acted irrationally and ran out and started knocking on people's doors, and those homeowners also called 911, reporting a woman frantically saying she was in danger. Gilbert then ran into a marsh when she was found 19 months after her disappearance. Due to the pressure being thrown at them by the 23-year-old's family, the police conducted a search for the missing girl, but police stumbled upon the remains of 4 other women wrapped in burlap and discarded like trash along Gilgo Beach. These 4 victims were later named the Gilgo 4. These discoveries marked the beginning of one of the most perplexing and terrifying cases in American criminal history. But this was just the beginning. Over the few years, more bodies were found. These victims shared a terrifying pattern. They were petite, vulnerable, and worked as sex workers. Their lives were tragically cut short by a predator they didn't see coming. The Gilgo 4. Who were these women? How did they end up wrapped in burlap and tossed out like trash? Melissa Barthelemy, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello, all in their 20s. All were beautiful individuals, and they were all working as escorts the night they disappeared. It seems like the killer had a type. The victims were all petite and vulnerable at the time of the murder. The murderer most likely loved being in power as he stood over his victim. And among those victims was one of the Gilgo 4, who had been missing for nearly 4 years, Maureen Brainerd Barnes. She was a 25-year-old single mother with a lot of financial difficulties, from being threatened to be evicted by her landlord to risking losing custody of her child, which is why she made the decision to travel to New York City on the 9th of July 2007, where, unknown to her family, Maureen worked as an escort. According to her fellow escort and friend Sarah Carnes, who was interviewed in The Gone Girls, Maureen was hoping to make around $3,000 on the day she disappeared. She was planning on getting that money to stave off her financial trouble temporarily. So, when Carnes calls it a night, Maureen insists on taking on more clients. At some point, she called her sister from the train station to come to get. But when that plan fell through, she decided to take the train back. She had no idea this would be the last time her loved ones would ever see or hear from her again. About 2 weeks of her sister being missing, an unknown woman had called to tell her that she had seen Maureen, but she never called back. Maureen's sister, Melissa Cann, said, "I started losing faith when more of her kids' birthdays passed, more Christmases passed." Megan Waterman was discovered first of the Gilgo 4. It's been nearly 2 years since the day after Maureen Brainerd Barnes disappeared. 24-year-old Melissa Barthelemy vanished after mentioning that she was headed out to see a client in Long Island. Originally from Buffalo, New York, Barthelemy was living in the Bronx when she suddenly went missing. Her sister, Amanda Barthelemy, recalled that after graduating from cosmetology school, Melissa left town in search of work opportunities. Like the other victims that make up the Gilgo 4, Barthelemy's body was found more than a year later in December 2010, bound and wrapped in burlap. Because of the proximity and similarities between each crime scene, the authorities believed that a single killer was responsible for the 4 murders. The days following her initial disappearance, her then teenage sister, Amanda Funderburg, began to receive taunting phone calls from an unidentified man. The man would call her and say, "This isn't Megan. You know what I did to your sister. I killed her." But what the killer didn't realize was that this was one of his first few mistakes, because even though the police were unable to figure out who was making the phone calls, they did trace them back to Midtown Manhattan. A devoted mother who was willing to sacrifice anything for her daughter, but what she wasn't prepared for was to leave her daughter forever. Megan Waterman, 22, was born and raised in Maine. Her early years were marked by a tumultuous family life and teenage run-ins with the law. She eventually turned to sex work as a means of supporting her young daughter. Her family quickly noticed when she went missing on June 6, 2010, because her frequent phone check-ins with her daughter had come to an abrupt halt. Surveillance footage from the Holiday Inn Express on Long Island, where Waterman was staying, revealed that she was last seen leaving the hotel around 1:15 a.m., presumably to meet with a client. Her remains were eventually found along Ocean Parkway, along with the rest of the Gilgo Four. Megan was loved by a lot of people, says her aunt, Elizabeth Meserve, and this affected a lot of lives. Her daughter shared her thoughts on what she would say to her mother if she were to ever meet again, which included, "I would tell her that I loved her so much." She admitted to being frustrated as she couldn't bring her mother back. And the last of the Gilgo Four, Amber Costello. Amber was living with friends in West Babylon, Long Island when she went missing in September 2010. In the documentary, her friend remembers her as quirky, goofy, and generous, and claimed that she would give the shirt off her back. Amber was a drug addict and used her escort job as a way to pay for the drugs. Her roommates, Dave Schaller and Bear Brodsky, were aware of her escort work and on one occasion had stepped in to protect her from a client when she called for help. On September 2010, the last night she was seen alive, Costello left to meet with a man who promised her a much higher fee than she was accustomed to if she stayed with him for 24 hours. Why was this weird compared to any other normal night? It was because her customer didn't want her to bring her purse or her phone into his car. After she disappeared, Schaller and Brodsky gave the police a detailed description of the man they had previously ejected from the house, suspecting that he might be involved. In the immediate aftermath of her disappearance, the police didn't pursue this lead, but years later, the man's description of the client and his car. While talking about her client's Amber, had let it slip that one of her clients was a big ogre-like man. This led directly to the arrest of Rex Heuermann. But how did he do it? In an interview on YouTube, Heuermann claimed to have lived in Massapequa Park, on the south shore of Long Island, and that he's worked in Manhattan since 1987. According to investigators, Heuermann's cell phone records indicated that he had been in contact with 3 of the 4 victims, and an email account linked to him had been used to keep track of the police. He had 2 burner phones, which he used to make these phone calls. Court records also indicated that he had searched the internet for sadistic materials, child pornography, and images of the victims and their relatives. He was planning on getting in contact with the victims' relatives. There was a potential match between the DNA found in a pizza crust that Heuermann threw. The police had been tailing him and got a hold of the DNA, which was a match to the hair found on one of the victims' bodies. A potential match to Heuermann's wife was also found when comparing hair found on or near 3 of the victims to samples taken from bottles found in the trash outside the Heuermann residence. But the wife and kids were cleared as there is proof of them being out of town the night of the murders. The 59-year-old architect, Rex Heuermann, was arrested in Midtown Manhattan in July 2023. He was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, as well as 3 counts of the lesser charge of second-degree murder, related to the deaths of Melissa Barthelemy and Amber Costello, Megan Waterman. He was also named as the prime suspect in the death of Maureen Brainerd Barnes, and was charged with her murder in January 2024. On June 6, 2024, Heuermann was arraigned and charged with the murders of Jessica Taylor and Sandra Costilla. Costilla's murder had not previously been linked to the Gilgo Beach serial killings. With this development, the timeline of the case reached back to the early 1990s, much further than previously thought by police. In December 2024, Heuermann was indicted for the 2000 murder of Valerie Mack. Heuermann has pleaded not guilty on all counts. The Long Island serial killer case may finally be coming to an end. But for those who fought tirelessly for answers, for the victims and their families, this is a story of resilience and hope. Justice may have been delayed, but it was not denied.